and contributes all the time at our board meetings, at the AGMs. We always like to have our federal leaders in the room. So a little history on Scott. First of all, he is actually the youngest Huntsville town councillor at 21 years old. All three of my children are older than that. It's kind of weird. But anyway, all that to say, throughout those years, he learned firsthand what municipal leaders actually do and the keys to delivering success for residents. Those years have shaped us into the leader that stands in front of us today. He knows the frustrations when we're trying to move housing projects forward. He knows the weight of infrastructure decisions, and I think that's the big discussion point. This whole convention is infrastructure, so I look forward to pressing him on that. And he also knows that when it comes to crisis for homelessness, that is deepening, and it's municipalities that feel it first. In 2019, Scott made the leap to become the Member of Parliament for Prairie Sound, Muskoka. Today he serves on the Conservative Party's Shadow Minister for Housing, and his portfolio is a natural fit. That gives him the municipal lens for national conversations that urgently are needed today. As a member of the opposition, he plays a key role in holding the government to account, ensuring that the commitments on housing, infrastructure, and community supports translate into real action on the ground. Because building Canada's future deserves every order of government, that's every single order, to be part of the partnership. So join me for a astounding round of applause for Scott Aitchison. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's always great to be with FCM because, of course, I'm with friends. I'm with people who do every day what I grew up doing. I was first elected to the Huntsville Town Council and the Muskoka Regional Council when I was 21. I can assure you I didn't know much of anything back then. I'd like to think I know a little bit more now. And what I know for sure is that municipalities are absolutely the front line of our governance systems and on the housing situation. Of course, you heard that I focus on housing. And I have always said that municipalities are the front line on the front lines of our housing crisis in this country. And so partnerships are very important, and working with municipalities. I talk a lot about the importance of reducing the burden of government on building new homes, and so people can afford new homes. But that's not just the municipal level, that's the provincial and the federal level as well. And so I'm honored to be here to talk with you about ways that the federal government can certainly partner with municipalities and provinces to solve not just the housing crisis, but all the challenges that are related to that. I know full well that municipalities lack the resources to take care of all the infrastructure they're required to take care of. And I also know that one of the reasons that situation exists is because of higher levels of government that have downloaded all kinds of services to the property tax base that it was never, ever meant to pay for. And I know municipalities are struggling with those costs and with those services today. So I'm honored to be here, of course, and I'm honored to have a conversation. We're going to actually sit down and have more of a conversational style approach to this. But it's an honor to be here in Edmonton with all of you, and I thank you all for coming. And I just want to say thank you for your service to all of your communities. This is an important level of government, and it's great that you're all here working together. And I look forward to the conversation. Thanks very much for being here.
All right. All right, Scott. It's okay to say Scotty?
Absolutely.
So first of all, Scott, I just want to say thank you again for coming out. And I think it's, we all know, Canadians are really struggling under pressure right now, from housing affordability to the cost of, affordability in general in the economy. Our local elected leaders are really wrestling with this right now. So what would you say the role of municipality is in navigating these specific times, and how do we ensure all orders of government work together?
Well, it's no question in my mind. I just said that I think municipalities are like the front line of all governments, all governance in this country, and it's important that municipalities have the resources they need to achieve the results that their constituents expect. I think it's really important, though, to recognize that municipalities cannot do it alone. And I know you've heard that before from other politicians, but we need cooperation at all levels of government, and that means the federal government coming to the table with the resources, but not just resources, but a committed long-term resources to make sure that things like infrastructure is supported and municipalities have the resources they need to build what I call housing enabling infrastructure. And that's not easy to do with just these sort of one-off programs where municipalities of all sizes are required to follow the same process of applying and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't work. There's too many smaller municipalities in this country that they don't have the resources to commit to filling out all these painful applications. We need programs that are longer term, committed, and focused on objectives and making sure we achieve those, and not forcing municipalities to do things they can't afford to do.
Yeah, you're definitely speaking the right language in this room, Scott, and I appreciate that. And I think over the last couple of years, things have changed dramatically, and I really appreciate you thinking that the partnerships are really critical. Your time as mayor and as MP, infrastructure funding for housing, trade enabling, all these things that are part of larger projects. What's your vision for the federal government to deliver these critical infrastructure, trade enabling infrastructure, to be able to build what we need to get built? That's housing, that's communities. What's your vision?
I'm glad you raised that, because it's one of the things that when I was a mayor, and it's part of the reason why I decided to run federally, is that I noticed that in 2017, when the then federal government announced their national housing strategy, there was lots of programs they were announcing, lots of funds, and my observation as a mayor, in a community where housing was my #1 issue. Huntsville is a resort community. A lot of cottages, a lot of people with lots of money who come to visit. But the people who live and work in Huntsville, the family income, median family income is about 20% below the provincial average. And most people don't realize that about a place like Huntsville or Bracebridge, Muskoka, and Parry Sound generally. And so what I observed was that the federal government was very focused on housing programs, but every announcement seemed to be made in Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver or in Ottawa. Not that I would pick on Ottawa in front of you, of course. But what my observation was that, this is a pretty common thing that happens in our country, where the federal government focuses on the big cities and smaller and rural communities somehow get forgotten. And we cannot do that anymore. And this is one of the reasons why I said earlier that, we have to stop with these, laborious programs that municipalities have to apply to, because it commits a lot of resources. The small municipalities don't have the resources to fill out these forms constantly, only to find out that they didn't get accepted. This is the other thing that happens, right? And so I think that the federal government needs to come up with an infrastructure program that is based on the need, but with some very clear objectives about what we need to accomplish to get housing built. I still believe quite firmly that we need to reduce the cost and burden of government on the cost of a new home. And the way to do that is to work with municipalities, partner with them, make it easier for municipalities to say yes. And the federal government can do that.
Yeah, and you've been very clear on that message. And I think that's resonating now more than ever, actually. I think you look at local governments when it comes to zoning reforms, making it easier an application process so things actually happen. So how do we keep this momentum going? We're seeing it. We feel it in Ottawa. I got some great colleagues here. We're all making changes to be able to speed things out the door. We're not waiting as long for applications. If it meets the boxes, we want them out. So we're doing our part. How do we keep the momentum going on these ongoing barriers so all orders of government can continue to get these houses built?
Yeah, and I think the answer is to keep doing what we're doing. I'm 3 years ago, I guess, or 2 years ago, I was in Calgary, and I delivered a pretty tough speech about the importance of municipalities getting out of the way and making it easier to build. But I did also acknowledge then that it's important to have the resources that you need to do that job. And I feel a little bit of sense of accomplishment, because I feel like that that constant refrain from me and my party about the importance of getting out of the way and reducing the burden of government, it feels like we're making some progress there. Municipalities are doing some great things. And we can focus on Ottawa for a second, because Ottawa is one of the cities that is doing a lot. And the federal government has started to catch on as well. Like, they're working to, reduce development charges in those regions of the country where they're the highest. They're also, apparently they listen to us in Ontario. For a year, they're talking about reducing, eliminating the GST on all new homes under $1 million. I've been saying that for 3 years, and so it feels like we're making some progress. I think that Canadians will see the results when we reduce that burden, and the industry will pick up again. And I think it will be proof to all of us that we need to keep going in that vein, keep making it easier to build. But again, can't do it without real partnership from the federal and provincial governments with municipalities. And fundamentally, as I said before, the municipal tax base is paying for things it was never designed to pay for. This is something that we need to work with other levels of government as well to ease that burden on municipal taxpayers as well.
And I want to thank Scott for that, because as FCM board members, we've seen you've come out to some of our meetings, you've had those discussions, you've listened to us. And I think the Calgary message versus here is we all have to work together. And I appreciate that. I think that is a big change and something that we have to continue to go forward on. Now, I'm going to go on to one of my more concerning topics, and I think it is for you as well, is safer streets. And municipalities are increasingly having to respond to addiction issues, to mental health issues. Obviously, there's a big burden on our resources. Policing is not cheap, and addressing violent crime. What do you think needs to happen to promote community safety within communities, and how do we get to the root cause?
Well, this is one of those areas where, I mean, it's sort of multi-layered. There's no question about that. But one of the clear things that we need to focus on at the federal level is making sure that there are consequences for crime, and that's something that the Conservatives continue to push. But if I step up another sort of 20,000 feet and look at the issue more holistically, I think this is another area where it's crucially important for federal and provincial partnerships with municipalities. Again, homelessness, addictions, challenges on our streets, municipalities are once again on the front lines of this issue and have no resources really to address it, except for what's given to them by the provinces. We need to make sure that there is enough resources to make sure that we have beds for people that need to be in treatment as opposed to in a shelter. We need to make sure that the shelter system is an emergency system again, not just another form of housing for people to live in. And that's going to take a commitment to ending things like homelessness. In a country like Canada, you think about this. This is one of the richest countries in the history of the world. And there are more people living on the streets today than ever in our history. We can fix this, but it's going to take all levels of government working together on a focus to actually end homelessness. Municipalities cannot do it alone. We have to have a federal and provincial governments working together, making sure we have the investments to make sure that shelters are not like a permanent long-term solution. They are not, and we've got to start treating them that way. And I know municipalities cannot do it alone.
And I appreciate that a lot, Scott. Thank you. And I think anyone that comes to these AGMs, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone that comes to the FCM AGMs, I've been on FCM for 15 years, proudly. And I think the last few years, especially the last 5 or 6 years, you go to the AGMs, you look at the cities, you look what's happening on the streets, and it's concerning. And that's not just in the cities anymore. It is in the suburbs, it's in the rurals. And I appreciate that your point of view on that. Last but not least, just want to know, maybe you have some parting messages on what municipal leaders can take away from this convention here today. It's going to be a very challenging time. We have tariff and trade situations. We got obviously economic challenges. Tell us what you think as a former mayor, as someone that's sitting at another level of government, what you think municipalities can do to actually access some of the money and help make it a better world.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I often think back to my own time as mayor. In fact, the campaign I ran to become the mayor of Huntsville. Huntsville had just been through four terms, I guess, of two different mayors who were sort of very ambitious, big dreamer type fellas who, invested a lot of taxpayers' dollars into, big projects that everybody loved. They're all great. There was some controversy, of course. We had just finished hosting the G8 summit in Huntsville, so there's lots of federal dollars spread around. Everybody will remember Tony Clement building gazebos, that kind of thing. It was a bit controversial. But when I was running for mayor, I heard over and over again at the doors, people said, "Scott, everything's great. Like, the town's great. Everything's lovely. But can you just fix the roads?" Yeah. He said, every door I went to, they said, "Just fix the roads. Just fix the roads." And that resonated with me because, in my observation, anytime a municipal councilor or a mayor wanted to cut a ribbon on something, it wasn't on a road. It was usually on something grand, and so they always had these sort of pet projects. And so we called it the Back to Basics campaign. And we got back to basics. And people noticed. We doubled the capital investment in roads infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. We got rid of assets that didn't make sense for the municipality to have anymore. We got back to basics. And I think that all levels of government need to get back to basics. And so if I was going to encourage municipal leaders about anything, it would be that. Focus on the basics. Get back to basics. Focus on those things that your citizens expect of their local government. And the federal government needs to get back to basics as well, and focusing on working with municipalities to help them fund the things that we've forced them to fund. All levels of government need to get back to basics. That's my message. Let's get back to basics.
Great. Another round for Scott Aitchison, everybody. Thank you very much, Scott, for coming out today.
Well, a huge thank you to Scott Aitchison and to Tim Tierney. That is exactly the kind of discussion that we're facilitating here at this annuals conference. We're really looking to ensure we're hearing energetic, problem-solving conversations with leaders from different orders of government, digging into the issues that all of you are facing at a vital time. And the great thing is that